How you going, YouTube? Today I just wanted to chat about my Kundalini awakening experience. And originally I conceptualized it as more of a succinct sort of narrative. But I've actually had an experience recently chatting to someone, Mickey Owen, who's a great bloke and a fellow Kundalini traveler. And he's got some really interesting YouTube videos that he posted about these automatic spontaneous kriyas, movements, automatic yoga, whatever you want to call it. I'm all ears in terms of whatever anyone wants to call it, because it is a strange thing. But he had some good videos that he posted about his experience with these movements happening to him after a pretty intense series of ayahuasca ceremonies. And I saw those movements, saw that video, and I thought I'll chat with him. And something he said when we were chatting really got me to thinking that there might be more to this experience, like in terms of the timeline, than previously I had thought, which is interesting because my Kundalini awakening sort of really burst into the scene during a Vipassana meditation retreat, a 10-day intensive meditation retreat. If you've been on one, you know they're pretty intense and pretty challenging. And so that was sort of the scene of the crime. But as always with these things, it does go further back because I had some ayahuasca experiences a while ago. But since then, that really got me thinking that, because his experience was very similar to mine, and then his awakening started right after that. So it got me thinking, and I just thought when making this video, I should probably frame it a little bit further back. And sort of, I want to encapsulate, this is sort of my awakening journey. And it involves psychedelics and a bit of trauma and things in the past and all of that sort of thing. But I think I'd be remiss not to include all of those things because they're all related, I think. And especially, it goes further and further back the more you understand the links. But with a lot of these sort of spiritual, psychological phenomena, it's hard to see where those threads are that are pulling the marionette strings of your current present moment experience now. There's that interrelatedness, interconnectedness that's important. So back to the sort of close to where I think might be the beginning. I'll just preface by saying I've always been a sensitive. Let me just check the camera's recording. Oh, sorry, Roy. We're rolling. I just don't want to get the whole way through and then see that it wasn't rolling. So I was always been a sensitive sort of kid. I didn't have a horrifically traumatic childhood like some people have had, but my experience there is how sensitive you are is on a continuum, and then what happens to you is on a continuum. And if you're really sensitive and not much happens, you're all right. But if you're really sensitive and some sort of shitty stuff happens, it can have a dramatic effect. Versus if you're really hardy and some really rough stuff happens and you're not as sensitive, maybe there's not as much trauma. Trauma is sort of, I had a conversation with Igor Kofayev, who's an awesome speaker and spiritual sort of teacher in the Kundalini space. And his way of framing was almost like a digestive, I think Eastern influences and things on him led him to that way of understanding. But it's like, if you can't digest an experience, the residual lives on in the body, and that energy stays in the body, and that's where you can run into problems. And so I think that if you're really sensitive, it's like having not the best digestive system in terms of experiences, you know what I mean? And you can end up with more of that energy stored in the body. So that's enough about the sort of preamble. But I was a sensitive fella. I had not the greatest childhood, definitely by no means the worst, and a lot of addictive tendencies, a lot of struggle with impulse control and addictions all throughout my life. Early on it was video games, then as soon as I discovered substances, it was substances, and then cannabis, cigarettes, alcohol, all of that sort of thing, and pretty much anything we could get our hands on, and I could get my hands on at that stage. And then that sort of graduated on. I had a couple of psychedelic experiences sprinkled throughout there, LSD and different things, but lots of unknown sort of researchy weird chemicals as well, and some not so great experiences. But I do remember some of those experiences waking me up a little bit to some of my addictive patterns and the way I was sort of fairly hell-bent on destroying myself physically and all of that sort of stuff. So that was early on. And then I got to a point where I came off of the substances. I was at least had enough critical thinking and self-awareness to be like, okay, well, this doesn't seem like the greatest thing. Let's remove the substances. But then I just went full on into behavioral addictions. You know what I mean? More really chronic video games, internet use, pornography, everything that goes along with that. And I was really in quite a bad way. This was, late teens, early 20s sort of years. And I'm 32 now for reference, I think. I'm always either a year up either way when I get my age these days. I think that's a side effect of getting old. And so I was rough. Early 20s, nearly suicidal, just all left hemisphere, addiction. As I said, that bit of trauma, that sensitivity. But when you're in an addiction, as sensitive people will know, or maybe everyone can sort of get a sense of it, that addictions really, their main desired side effect is sort of numbing you off. And there's reasons for that I understand physiologically and evolutionarily and stuff like that. We won't go into that in any great detail, but I was pretty numbed off and I just didn't see any meaning or point in life. And so at that point, I went on I felt the call to take ayahuasca. And I know people feel that call. And the way that I've come to conceptualize psychedelics usage now is really just, if you feel really strongly pulled and called to these sort of initiatory, shamanic, mystical, spiritual experiences, do it. Provided you're, of the correct age and, legality where you are and all of those sorts of things, or your ability to travel to places where it is more legal or whatever. But I've really found that when you feel that strong call, it's for a reason. And for me, it was. And I got called to take ayahuasca, and I was in Australia at the time, so I went to South America. Me and my old boy went, and he even did a ceremony. But I did 2 ceremonies, and they were just intense as hell. As you know, if anyone's done DMT, either ayahuasca or smoked DMT, it's some of the most intense experiences you can have and still remain alive afterwards. Terence would always eloquently say it's the most intense thing you can go to this side of the yawning grave, which I think is beautiful. So had those experiences. Won't go into great detail apart from the fact of the shared aspect, which is common here, which I think it pays to mention inside the sort of packet of information of this particular video, because some of these initiatory experiences on ayahuasca, I think, do have the potential to wake up that Kundalini energy within you. And I know everyone says, oh, you shouldn't do it with drugs or substances. These are plants, really. You know what I mean? Let's be clear in our language. Psilocybin, ayahuasca, those are plants. One's a fungus. It's really not that unnatural if you eat plants all the time anyway. But these happen to be psychoactive plants. People say don't wake up that way, but hell, it worked for me, and I'm still here. So there's that side of it. And had those experiences. That there's an intense initiatory experience where there can be like other beings around, and you're called into a space, and it's ceremony or ritual, laser upgrades to the brain, mantis beings. There wasn't a lot of mantids in that particular ayahuasca experience, but I've had mantis experiences with other ayahuasca and definitely with psilocybin big time. And those experiences can seem to wake up the energy inside of you. They seem to do upgrades on your brain, sort of laser crazy shit that's hard to understand or integrate. Can be erotic and sexual and different things. This particular experience wasn't for me. It was just outer space, alien soul family type feeling, and I don't throw those words around a lot. I don't conceptualize of things that way, but that's what it felt like, an intimate, deep, ancient relationship with these beings. They did this laser upgrade to my brain, sent me on my way, and then my life got a lot better and put me on the right track, but no Kundalini activity, and I say Kundalini, I don't really love that word. It's not a word from, my culture. Not that Australia has, much culture at all, but it's not a high impact word for me. But automatic movements, energy active within the body, that sort of thing didn't happen. And so go on 6, 7 years later, 8 years later, a few more psilocybin experiences, no more ayahuasca experiences, a lot of self-work, and the ayahuasca really put me on a great path. I saw the meaning in life. I understood more right hemisphere activation, damping down of that left overactive hemisphere, and I was on the right path. And putting the work in bit by bit, got really into meditation. As I said, I had a few more psychedelic experiences, but one every 5 years type thing, not a lot, only a handful in there. And they were really helpful too. Psilocybin and ayahuasca, I think, are the main therapeutic hallucinogens or entheogens, whatever you want to call them. And then I went on a meditation retreat, and this is where things got pretty crazy. And so, I'd all but forgotten about that aspect of the ayahuasca until I spoke with Mickey recently. But this was, let's say, I think it was 2024 February. So it's about 2 years now, anniversary of the Kundalini energy waking up in me. And I was about 4 or 5 days into this meditation retreat, and as you know, if you've been on those retreats, it's pretty strict. No looking at anyone, no reading, no technology, no nothing, no eating past lunchtime. Very sort of spiritually, monastically, intensely focused. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good container. The men and the women are separated, so there's not a lot of sexual charge getting through. You can only vaguely see each other across the hall, and only so much can be transmitted over those distances, and all good things. And about day 4 or 5, they take you from just training up your concentration on the breath to transitioning to more focus on the body. And I had pretty laser sharp attention because I took this meditation retreat really seriously. So I was meditating 24/7. Walking meditation when you're walking, sitting meditation when you're in the hall, full boot camp style. Frank Yang's got a really good phrase there, ego death camp. That's what it feels like. And when I drew that really concentrated, rarefied attention onto my body, I did a few scans, and you scan the body and, analyze the body part by part and bit by bit with a finer and finer grain of aperture of attention. And this was just the first sort of fairly gross, body part by body part, and dragging your attention all around the body. And I became aware of a visceral sense of craving and aversion. Like they talk about that in the Buddhist frame, and there's a lot of Buddhist education on those Goenka Vipassana courses. And I could feel, and this might sound crazy or not that crazy depending on what sort of experiences you've had, but I could feel craving and aversion in my body. I could feel, and it wasn't so much craving because there was a lot of aversion on these meditation retreats. There's not much to crave, and they do that for a reason, which is good. But a lot of aversion. And so it's hard to explain, but picture like that's you sitting in meditation. Right at the core of you there, sort of in here, is where you would begin to avert, like something painful or uncomfortable or whatever. You begin to go in, and I think it's the beginning of sort of going fetal. You know what I mean? Like when you're really anxious, you'll go fetal to protect the vital organs. And it was like the beginning of going fetal, and I could just feel it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's the aversion they're talking about. Okay, that makes sense. And as soon as I got that and internalized it, and this is like seconds, I was like, my body immediately just went bang, arm out automatically, head to that side, and hey, dingus. Hold on. He's going to cause problems here. There you go. There's those two. Play with those. Don't take out the camera. Immediately, I was blown away. I was like, holy shit, my body's moving on its own. And that was crazy. That had never happened before. Just checking on that camera. Something just happened then. We're good. So my body started moving on its own, which, you know, I don't know what sort of experiences you've had, but I'm pretty scientific. I've got a Bachelor of Biomedical Science. I'm a pretty logical, more left hemisphere sort of oriented individual. That blew me away. And started moving and stretching, and I quickly figured out the name of the game was as quick as you can and as deep as you can feel that little bit of aversion, because it would say you go here, and I don't know about your body, I held a lot of tension here in the shoulders and the neck, you know, that sort of like just that region was big for me in terms of where I would store my nervous energy and trauma and all of that sort of stuff. And it would go to a painful spot, I would avert and begin sort of and I'd feel that energetic signature. And then if I would relax, the tension would melt out of the area and dissipate. And then it would move on to another area that was unlocked because that area had been unlocked. And da-da-da-da-da. It went on and on like that for the whole 2-hour sit. These Vipassana retreats have dedicated 2-3 hour blocks of sitting, and then you have a little dinner break or whatever, and then back to sitting in the group hall, and then alone in your room, and yada, yada, yada. So it was the end of the group sit. I went up and talked to the meditation teacher, and I was like, this happened, and he was like, oh, I don't know, that sounds pretty crazy. Try not to move though, because you'll distract the other students. And I sort of staggered out of the meditation hall, like bleary-eyed. I was in a bit of an altered state of consciousness, and I'm familiar with that from psychedelics, and I staggered off, not really knowing where I was going and what I was doing. And then I quickly realized I was staggering off to a private spot, and I knelt down, squatted down and burst into tears. All of this energy came pouring out of me. A real sort of somatic release from the tension that was in that area. And all of these memories, as that happened, all of these memories came flooding up of, you know, stuff with my mom and from my childhood and different things. It was all stored in there. Kinetic energy storage within the body as trauma and tension. And I've since learned that, you know, to conceptualize this as sort of the body-mind system, you know, all of this mind-body stuff they're identifying these days with microbes and nerve signals and vagus nerves, and it's all interrelated in quite a beautiful way. And so all of these memories and all of this energy was liberated for me, and that was it. That was the beginning of the process. And I went back to my room, hours and hours, didn't sleep for the first night, just moving, head on a cement mixer, all of this tension and energy and came pouring out of me, and all I was required to do was to feel that aversion to the pain and going back and into the tension, and then let it melt away and melt away and melt away. And I did this over and over and over and over, and it felt fantastic because I was getting into muscles and nerves and tendons and all of these things that had been stuck together, glued with tension and scar tissue and myofascial tissue and all of this stuff for years. The fascia, and there was things where I was reefing my head and through my arm in specific spots, reefing my head, and I'd be pulling fascia out of my rib cartilage, and it was just it's honestly mind-boggling, the in-depth knowledge of physiology that this energy has, and has only continued to show me over the years. This was 2 years ago, as I said, and just absolutely blew me away. Hey, come away from there. Come here. Come here. Absolutely blew me away, and I really was taken aback. The problem was, and you know, this can be the problem as people who've experienced this. I know it's a relatively rare phenomena, but I know people do experience it, especially in this visceral physical way, because I've seen others, and so it was hard to stop the energy, was what became the issue. And I talked to the teacher, they had no idea. I have since learned, and I get a sense that this is pretty rare for the awakening to occur so vigorously through the body. Seems like the only place for it to occur is through the body, but it can be really subtle for some people and not so explosive. Mine was quickly turning into headstand yoga. It has so much situational awareness, this energy. I would be you're in these little cots at these meditation retreats. I'd be arm under the single bed frame, gripping onto a slat, head over here, leg up above there, and then it would go like 1 release, 2 release, 3 release, all of like the 3 spots that you need to stretch the most in your body. Bang, 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 in sequence as one relaxes the other. And it very quickly showed me that this energy knows what it's doing. It knows the body vastly more intricately than I do. It won't hurt the body, but it is also willing to break a few eggs to get what it needs. And what it wants to do is untangle the nervous system. And so I ended up getting kicked out of the retreat. That whole thing, because I couldn't really stop the movements, especially during meditation. Like, it wasn't like I was being jerked about every second, but as soon as I still my mind, and the same thing still happens right now. So I'll give you an example. As soon as I pause and go still, my body has things that it wants to move. So and it would go from there, and I can sort of feel what it wants to do, but this isn't the time or the place for it, so I won't do that. But that's just how life is for me now, and it's a beautiful process. It's led me in such a deep connection with my body. It's leading me deeper and deeper into the present moment and all of these things. So anyway, long story short, I got kicked out of the retreat. I went home and finished the retreat just doing the movements with the body for like 8 hours a day. A key thing to note there, I did notice that if you do it for a really extended period in a day, you get nauseous. It's so much movement of energy that I was feeling the limits of it going over the top. And so I think that might be around 5 or 6 hours from what I could tell of really fully with it, moving with the energy in the body, would get nauseous and feel really run down. So I think staying under that on a per day basis is not that anyone has, that much time. I was in this retreat context, but I couldn't find 5 or 6 hours now. I've got a daughter and full-time work and everything like that, but I try to find a couple of hours each day, and I find that really beneficial when I do. But yeah, so that was sort of my Kundalini awakening process, if you want to call it that. Very physical, very visceral in the body, and it's hard because it's so intense and physical. It's really hard to trust it from the conventional society, where we've sort of we grow up with the frame of the body's dumb, it's a meat suit. The mind tells you what to do. If you want to do some stretching, follow these poses that we've lined out here. This is not that. This is a body first led, deeply spiritual and profound, visceral, personal experience of surrender into the body and into the present moment. And so it rocked my faith a few times. There would be times when it was getting really rough, and I think at first I didn't have the best connection with it. Like in terms of knowing how far it would, like trust, I guess, like total surrender and trust is what it needs. And sometimes maybe I pulled back or went too far, and you really have to let it take control. Because I did get, and I'm not sure if this would have just happened anyway, because as I said, I had a lot of work to do on my neck. There was parts that went numb, like sensory nerve, not motor, but sensory nerves that were a bit overstretched by the process, but the sensation quickly came back, a couple of weeks, and it was fully back, no pain or anything. And that's sort of the worst that I've had from it, but it is an intensely painful process because it leads you into the place that you least want to look. You know what I mean? It's like the somatic body equivalent of the Knights of the Round Table entering the Lost Wood at the place that looked darkest to them. This process will lead you to the place that you least want to look, the place that looks darkest to you in your nervous system, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, because that's the area that needs the work. And yeah, beautiful process. I've talked to, as I said, Igor Kofayev, had a good conversation with him. I've been sort of scouting and looking for more people to talk to about it. It's been 2 years I've been going through the process, but it's a beautiful process, and I think that you don't really need anyone else. It's a personal process, and what you need to do is surrender and allow the nervous system to untangle itself. It's like a rubber band ball that's had 30 years of modern living worth of tension, depending on how sensitive you are. That it might be more or less tension, and depending on how in tune you were with the body to begin with. Because like I said, the bloke that I talked to, Mickey, he was a bit older, but he after his ayahuasca experience of a similar nature, laser brain upgrade, sort of sacred ancestors or family or whatever, his awakening happened immediately. I wasn't ready. My body was a wreck, from sitting on the computer and being so full of tension and energy and addiction, and I needed at least that amount of work to get there. And ultimately it was the Vipassana meditation retreat that did it. I think the key ingredient was the silence and the lack of external input that was so rare in the modern world, that once I could tune into my own body and pick up on that energetic signal of the craving and the aversion, things just started pouring out. So I think you could probably go and do, 10 days in beautiful nature, wilderness. And I have done periods of isolation in a similar spot to this. And they seem like they'd have a lot of potential for awakening that energy. Whether you want it awakened, does it awaken through meditation or psychedelics or fasting or whatever? I've done it all. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to say. But at the time that it did awaken, it was an intensive meditation retreat. And I was meditating for, say, probably an hour a day before the retreat. And then after the retreat, it got a bit harder because, as I showed, every time I quiet my mind and, just surrender to the moment, there's movements that pour out of me. I'll attach in some clips now, if I can, of some of the movements. And I'm also going to do a video because I think there's a real lacking at the moment of people documenting just how physical and visceral this process is. As I said, there's a few good accounts out there of Mickey Owen, James did in Bush. Shout outs to him. He's got a couple of, Kundalini videos that I really like as well, but he put up a clip of it happening to him, same process. And there's a couple of people, but the reason why I think is because it's pretty uncomfortable and intimate to share it, because it's very visceral and personal. And it can be sexual in terms of, there's a tantric element here, which, we should go into now and discuss. Sexual energy is a powerful energy within the body. And if you build that energy up, but don't just immediately release it for your own edification and gratification, it can enrich. It's a powerful energy that the body uses to do more of that work on a bit of a supercharged basis, and very tantric. It'll build up, the energy will work with me to build up the sexual energy and then move it into these other areas. And at the stage that I'm at now, it's a lot of like precise hand work and mudras, and there's not a lot of audible stuff that comes out of me. I don't know if that's a level of me suppressing. I have had it during big releases, and so like that release I mentioned where I cried and the memories came up, there's been 2 or 3 other really big ones like that early on, but not for a while. It's almost like those are the real gross blockages with a lot there that can't be processed just through mechanical motion, and it actually needs an emotional component. But a lot of people have singing and shouting, and I've had that during, just groaning and needed to vocalize during really intense releases. But I often do it when, my wife and child are asleep. So, I don't want to, I'm already flopping around and things because I do it upstairs. So that's enough of a disturbance. I don't know if, I would be comfortable adding a vocalization component. So maybe I'm unconsciously sort of suppressing that. It's definitely a possibility, but yeah, really beautiful process. And it did get really psychedelic during the retreat when it first, and I didn't sleep that night, and it got wild and very intense, and was similar to a high dose ayahuasca or psilocybin experience for a time there. Just, it had a job to do, and it was very visceral, and yeah, it really is hard to explain how much capacity there is for movement and change within your body. Like, it'll remap an area, and then you'll go to move your arm normally, like it'll remap your neck over an hour. You'll go to move your arm normally, and it's like a cement mixer of like your arm's in a different spot now, and it's got to like move through all of this like different tissue movements and sort of remap itself, and it's honestly mind-blowingly phenomenal what this energy can do in the body. But yeah, so that's the process that happened to me. I'll put in some clips of maybe as I was just talking of some examples of the movements and that sort of thing, and show you guys a little bit. And I will make a video, as I was going to say before I got sidetracked. That's sort of how I communicate. It's a bit scatterfire, but I'll put in I'm going to do a video of mapping out all of the movements that I can show on camera and what it felt like they were achieving in me at that time, and how difficult they were, and what it felt like experientially. Because yeah, I think that there's a real gap of that information. And I don't give a shit about views or any of this stuff. This is just to have it documented, because that's what I'm looking for, and a lot of people had been looking for and didn't really find much of, apart from the names that I mentioned before. And because it's a little bit confusing, people talk about it and they skirt around it and they don't mention how visceral it is. And it makes me wonder, is it happening the same way for me as it is for them? Because this is intense physical, like this is like military boot camp physical process. Some people's process might not be so physical, but if yours is, I'm going to make a resource for you there of going a bit more into detail about that side of mine, and mapping out some of the different things that it does with the body and with the hands. And it looks and seems like energy work, and it does a lot of like moving things without touching, and then also a lot of touching and moving, and a lot of stuff that looks like yoga, and it's a whole thing. So yeah, just wanted to get this video out there with a bit of a basics of my awakening story and that sort of thing. And yeah, let me know if you've experienced something similar. I know it is pretty rare, so I know that not a lot of people are gonna have experienced it, but if I can title it and package it right, maybe you find it because you're searching for this. And maybe look on the channel. I have got my old ayahuasca experience if you want to go and listen to that. That's an ancient video. It's a horrific audio and video quality. Not that this one's much better. This is just filmed on my phone, but you can check some of that out. I've got a mushroom experience, an ayahuasca experience, and yeah, I'll put this one up, and hopefully I make a few more on the really visceral nature of the movements. But thanks for listening if you enjoyed it, and yeah, appreciate you guys. And if you're going through this process, best of luck. And may God be with you, because it's pretty intense, but know that it's healing and it won't hurt you. And the key ingredient is surrender, absolute total surrender. And whatever this energy is, Shakti, God, whatever's going on, it will look after you. That bit I can guarantee. Exactly what it is and why it wants to do what it wants to do, and I've got no idea. But it will look after you, and it's a beautiful process. And it will, if it does what it has done for me, it'll lead you deeper and deeper and deeper into the present moment, subtly and slowly but surely. And things will change for the better, as is always the case when you move deeper into the present moment. So yeah, thanks for watching, and all the best, eh?